Hey team, we are on Module 6, Lesson 1 today. We are moving into decimals and understanding tenths and hundredths. Follow along with me today. Feel free to grab your own sheet of paper and take notes as we go through these example problems, or feel free to look back at this video when you move on to your classwork and homework if you have any questions. So bear with me as I'm learning how to use all of this new technology, and here we go. All right, so our main idea for today's lesson is what are tenths? So basically, we're going to find tenths when we split a whole into 10 equal parts. Okay, so we're going to represent this amount as either a fraction or a decimal, and today I'm going to show you what that looks like. So we know our tenths are when we split something into 10 equal parts. So our first example, we're thinking about a kilogram, just a single kilogram. So if I have 1 kilogram and I want to split it into 10 equal parts, my question is, what fraction would each piece be? So I want you to think back to when we have one whole and we want to split it into 10 pieces, our denominator is going to become 10, making each of these pieces 1/10. Because we know if we add up 1/10 10 times, we will end up with 10 tenths, which is equivalent to 1 whole. So if I take that same 1 kilogram and I want to split it into 10 equal pieces but represent their values with decimal form, it's going to look a little bit different. So rather than our 1/10 fraction, if I want to represent 1/10 with a decimal, I would write it as 0.1, and that would be read as 1/10. So that means each of my pieces would be 1/10, 1/10, 1/10. So you'll notice that I'm saying 1/10 even though it is written as 0.1, and that's because these are equivalent values, and no matter which way you write it, you're going to say it the same way, because they do in fact represent a tenth of that whole piece, whether it's written as a fraction 1/10 or as a decimal 0.1. Something important to remember. So when we think about these numbers, our 0.1 is going to be decimal form. So when your classwork and homework this week ask you to answer in decimal form, it's just referring to that version where you have that decimal point. Okay, so let's scroll down a little here. So that brings us to our decimal point. It is the number, that shows when a value is less than a whole. So just like with our fractions, we know that a fraction is less than a whole because it's just one small piece of our whole. The same goes for our decimals. It's going to be less than a whole because it is just one small piece. All right, so going from here, we're going to now move to example 2, where we're going to be putting fractions and decimals on a number line to help you see the equivalence between 1/10 as a fraction and 1/10 as a decimal. So, all right, so when I go to label my number line, I'm going to start at 0. We're going to end at 1 whole. Okay, so if I want to show tenths, I'm going to have to split my number line into 10 equal pieces, which means I need 9 lines to make my 10 pieces. Okay, so as I label these, I'm going to label across the bottom my decimal version of my tenths, and across the top we'll go back and do the fractional version so we can compare. So I'd have 0.1 or 1/10, 0.2 or 2/10, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, and 9/10, and we know that 10 tenths would make 1 whole. Okay, so across the top, we'll show the same with our fraction pieces. So again, we're starting at 0, and we're going all the way to 1 whole. So I'll have 1/10, 2/10, and so on. So bear with me as I write all these in, they take a little while. But what I want you to see as you're looking at this filled in number line is I want you to see the comparison and the equivalence between the decimal form and the fraction form. And I want you to start noticing this because as we continue, you need these to be interchangeable. So if I say 7/10, you need to know that that is 7/10 as a fraction, or that is 0.7 as a decimal form. So go ahead and just soak that in real quick. And then below here, we're going to do some practice where we are taking the fraction version of our number and we're going to answer in decimal form. So if you look up at our number line we just created, that's going to be a major guide for you as we do this. So if I have 2/10, I would take a look at my number line, I'd see it's right here, and I would know, oh, that's the same as the decimal 0.2. Okay, 4/10, same thing. Find it on that number line, and you would see that it is 0.4, 4/10. Same with 6, find it right here, 0.6. And our last one, 9/10, would be written as 0.9. Okay, so this will be a handy thing to come back to when you're working on your classwork if you get a little stuck about, oh wait, I don't remember what's what here and how they match up. So this will be a great resource. All right, I am going to need to scroll down. Let's see if it'll let me. Awesome. All right, so our example 3. We're moving on to addition with our tenths. This will look familiar because we've done this before. If I take 2/10 plus 4/10, I have to remember that because my denominator is the same, they are both tenths. When I add these, that denominator is not going to change. That means my denominator will stay 10, and I can just look at my numerator and see, oh, I have 2 and 4. I know that 2 plus 4 is 6, so my answer would be 6/10. If I were to rewrite this equation in decimal form, what would that look like? I would have to write it as 0.2 plus 0.4 equals 0.6. So equivalent equations here, but you'll notice that if one we wrote in fraction form, in the second we wrote with decimal form. Excuse my sloppy circles. All right, on this next one, I have 3/10 plus 5/10. Same idea, my denominators are the same, so I can add my numerators. 3 plus 5 is 8, and my denominator will not change. With this one, when I rewrite it, I would have 0.3 for 3/10 plus 0.5 for 5/10 equals 0.8, 8/10. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next addition problems where we're adding two fractions to equal one whole. So we're looking for the missing. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, 6 plus what gets me to my 10/10 or one whole? Well, I know that's 6 plus 4. So I know that 4/10 would be my missing fraction here. The next one, 2/10 plus what gets me to one whole? Don't forget that that one whole, we can think about that one whole as being 10/10 because we know that 10/10 is an equivalent for one whole. So with this one, I know that my missing number would have to be 8/10 because I know that 2 plus 8 equals 10. On this last one, we've got 7/10 plus what equals one whole. Again, I'm looking to get to 10/10, so my missing piece is going to be 3/10 because I know that 7 plus 3 is 10. All right, moving on to our last section. Here we're going to see our fraction, decimal, and unit form and how they're all the same and equivalent, and just seeing them all together will help guide you and assist you in your classwork that's coming up. So this first one, unit form, is 3/10, okay? Miss Martin is not super confident with her decimal, so she's going to start with her fraction because she knows that 3/10 as a fraction looks like 3/10. Now she's thinking back to, oh wait, on that number line when my 3/10 matched up, decimal and fraction form, that means my decimal would look like 0.3. Not too bad. All right, so my next one, I have 0.5 as my decimal, which is 5/10, which gives me my unit form answer, 5/10. Oops. I imagine my handwriting will get better as we do this every day. My fraction form of 5/10 would just be 5/10. All right, number 3, problem 3, we have 8/10. So I know that's going to look like 0.8 and 8/10. So right here, we are just practicing rewriting that same fractional number or that same value in 3 different ways, with unit form, with decimal form, and with fraction form. So my last one, I have 4/10, which is 4/10. 0.4. And that's all. So when you get to your classwork today, I want you to spend about 20 minutes on your classwork. It might not take you that long. You might finish it faster than that, but I want you to do at least 20 minutes. And then 15 minutes on your homework. So my suggestion for you today is to just set a timer and get as much as you can done for those 2 timers that you set. If you have any questions, leave me a message under this video and I'll get back to you, and we can either message or I'll set up a meeting to video with you later today. Happy learning. I hope that your first day of digital learning goes well. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.